Hello again, everybody. Shona Salmon, and you know the way the Queen of England does a Christmas Day speech? Well, and it's usually about, how we all have to be nice to each other and this bullshit. But except for, what was his name, the Duke of York, Prince Andrew. I would like to give my Salmon's Day message. And the title of the video will be how Judeo-Christian civilization is a monumental lie. Recently, I had a run-in with a senior member of an Irish patriotic party, and an absolute tool, an absolute douchebag. I won't mention his name, but jabbed, by the way. Mr. Freedom is jabbed, but he had a go at me on social media before it was banned. I was thrown off all social media except, well, YouTube. That Europe was built on Christian morality and Christian civilization. That's bollocks, absolute bollocks. I'm going to show you why. And then when I said to him, no, it wasn't. I probably know a lot more about this topic than you do. You're just repeating things you heard from American Christian conservatives. And he goes, well, who the hell are you anyway? I'm not going to waste my time. And I says, well, I've got over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And then the next thing out of his mouth was, oh, I bet you paid for them. So this is the so-called alternatives that are running for the patriot scene in Ireland. But this guy is going nowhere anyway. He has been for a while. But so in that light, let me explain to you why the Judeo-Christian thing is a monumental lie. Now, if you're to say Europe is anything, it's classical pagan deist. By that I mean the classical pagan world, which gave you everything, and the so-called Protestant Enlightenment, which is actually also falsely termed. It's really the deist Enlightenment. These, like the founding fathers of America, most of them hated Christianity. Now, they were deists in that they believed there was a creator to the universe, a supernatural creation to the universe, and by application of natural philosophy, studying the life and reality and material world was a way of actually validating that. So it was sort of kind of like an old-fashioned version of intelligent design. The two things worked in hand. There was a supernatural creator, but human beings were part of the natural law and understanding that. In other words, they were very similar to pagans, the classical pagans of ancient Greece and Rome. So we have a whole situation here. This guy called John Hammer just released a book called Israel, Cradle of the West. What the fuck? I mean, and it's like millions of Americans running out to get that book going. If it wasn't for Israel, the Jews, we wouldn't have America. The American founding fathers would have been not. We would have laughed at that. They wouldn't even taken it seriously. Why do you think all the buildings in the U.S. government, what are they designed on? The White House, the Capitol building, all of them, all the city halls, I'm talking about the ones from the early days of the Republic. They're all based on neoclassical designs. They were a revival of and then you see that all over Europe as well during the so-called the Enlightenment, right? Let's not call it the Protestant Enlightenment. It's really the deist Enlightenment, like Voltaire and all these people, Hume, all of them. They saw that there was something remarkable about the ancient classical world of Greece and Rome, particularly Rome. And so when they started to build their own government buildings, universities, and other public structures, they reverted back to the classic great Greco-Roman architectural style. Why? Because they recognized the inherent formation of what they were doing now during the Enlightenment as going back to Plato, Aristotle, the rest of them, and Pythagoras and so on, and Marcus Aurelius and all the everything else, from Euripides to Tacticus. You know, that's what they were paying homage to. They were saying our generation, the generation that gave birth to the American Republic, are paying homage to the ancient pagan world by saying we are part of that lineage. Now, the ancient pagan world did not extend to west of the Dardanelles. Well, it did actually. The Greeks had, but I would say into the Levantine. Now, you might say to yourself, well, it's kind of harmless. People, particularly Americans, going on about Judeo-Christian society. Well, is it really? Let's talk about that. You know, when I first got to America, and for many years living there, I was often amazed how young American people, genuinely otherwise good, decent human beings, when it came to wars in the Middle East or something in the Middle East, their attitude was just kill these bastards, wipe them all out, slaughter them. And that was something you'd never hear in Ireland, Britain, or Europe. You never heard anyone during the IRA days in England saying things like, just wipe all the paddies out. It's not the European way. It's not the European way. It's not genocide, killing children, killing innocent people because they're on the other side. That is an Old Testament first 5 books of the Torah way, following the demon Jehovah who's genocided and slaughtered and raped everybody in the Old Testament. So that is the psychic cancer of the Levantine lands. And the Levantine psychic cancer, through things like this fundamentalist Zionist Christians and so on in America, have infected the American culture, where they were behaving like, you know, even America, the most modern expression of the West, was started out with the most remarkable things at a time in Europe when even middle-class people were illiterate. You had farm boys in Vermont and Maine walking behind a plow, reading the classics. And they were so better educated in everything because America was a new way, a new thing, you know, a new beginning. And the working class in America were generally much better educated and formally in terms of being able to read and write and so on than the Europeans at the early part of the American Republic. All you have to do is look at the letters they wrote to their families and stuff when they were away at war and things like that. That was this Levantine bloodlust is not inherent to America or the American system. It was generated as a result of the evangelical Christianity in America, plus also Christian Zionism. And it was brought into America. I kill them all, slaughter them all, everything, this kind of thing. And yeah, people, if someone like Hamas kills loads of people on October 7th, you slaughter all the Hamas ones. You don't starve kids, you don't bomb hospitals just because they're on the other side of a wall. And then likewise, the same with the other side and all their, you know, infidels, and everyone's an infidel if they don't convert to, you know, Islam and stuff like that. This is the Levantine psychic cancer. It belongs in it belongs exclusively in these cursed lands in the Eastern Mediterranean. Levantine comes from the Levant, which means the east where the sun rises, blood red. And this is not European way of thinking. We are the people of reason. We are the people of dialogue. We are the people of diplomacy. In fact, if you want to look at diplomacy, you look at the early monks, Christian monks in Ireland, and their histories of the Irish paganism. Yes, they made concessions to the Bible, but generally the Culdees and the rest of these Irish monks wrote in such a way that they didn't say paganism is evil and must be wiped out. They said this was what paganism was like. Now this is what Christianity is like. They didn't say, it wasn't like, you know, if you see any pagans, wipe them all out and stuff like that. That's because it was different than the West. The further away you got from the Levantine, the less bloodlust you find. Now, if you don't look at them right now, the so-called ceasefire are still killing each other. How can you actually reason with that? Now, this is what has changed. This is why that is why there's a great panic now. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a classic example of a Levantine cancer, and it's a guy called Levin, Mark Levin, a guy who an American radio broadcaster who would do fantastic insights into American constitutionalism, and I'm fascinated by that stuff. You know, the founding fathers, and you know, the kind of like Federalist Papers and stuff like that. And you'd listen to him, and you'd be riveted. And he would finish up by saying, indirectly, but basically always the same editorial. And the reason why they had the Continental Congress in Philadelphia was so that Americans could die for Israel. That's literally what he ends with in one way or another at the end. The Levantine pollution. And you think, and don't kid yourself, it only is on one side. It's also on the other side. You have like a guy in New York. You have like a guy in New York running for mayor, and you have these kind of like left-wingy types in America and in Ireland who should be saying all the Jews in the Middle East should be wiped out. They've also adopted the other side of the Levantine psychic pollution. We're not like that. Europeans are different, and if you know, we're not. You know, it was actually brought by the Americans to Europe when they basically almost genocided the Germans after World War II. They decided that every German was a Nazi and guilty. Now, did that happen after World War One? No, because the Levantine infection had not taken over the United States the way it had by the time World War II came along. Remember, the 30s was a time of massive evangelical Christian growth in America, in the Bible Belt and so on. And you had like British Israelites movements who thought that like Americans were like the true people of the Bible and all this stuff. They were the true Jews, and you still get that on today. So this is why they're having massive fight back now. There's a massive push now, and I do believe that the attack on paganism, which I said in my video yesterday on the other channel, Thomas Sheridan 2, it is a genuine fear that the Levantine psychic cancer is worried about a growth of paganism everywhere, even in the United States. It's in the U.S. Army. I get letters emails from guys and women in the U.S. military, pagans. Yeah, it's happening, and they're not willing to be butchered in the Levantine for that cursed land that calls itself the Holy Land. And we're living in a very interesting time. Like literally, the old world is collapsing very quickly. Like I never thought we would see a situation where 9/11 would be openly spoken about as a conspiracy from the Levantine, Saudis, and Mossad. And here we are. It's out in the open. Enormous listenership. I never thought in my lifetime that I would see the COVID thing be exposed, and it's already been exposed. So the ones who have the greatest fear of being annihilated right now is this Levantine infection in the West. It's you see more and more Europeans are like in Ireland, it's now becoming very apparent to people that the Islamic Brotherhood is somehow running this country behind the scenes through the Gaza movement. And the entire Irish left, from Sinn Féin to People Before Profit to the Social Democrats, and right through every government department, are basically getting their orders directly from the Islamic Brotherhood. In the same way, in the United States, the whole thing gets the conservatives and so on, and all the government get their orders from AIPAC. The Levantine is on both sides. The Levantine is trying to turn not their own cursed land into a cursed planet, and it's starting to fall apart. Now, one other person I want to talk about has absolutely no credibility in my mind, and that's Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson is all over the Israeli media now, talking about how Israel is the foundation of the West. I mean, I don't know whether he's poorly educated or working for somebody, but I don't trust him or like him. I never really liked him anyway. I never really, his argy-bargy kind of carry on. The fact that he doesn't use his real name has always bothered me now. Is Tommy Robinson a code name? Is Mossad code, handle code or something? It's they're not. They're going to. They're trying to. They're trying to hold the Levantine psychic virus any way they can. Traditional Christianity has failed, so they've turned it into kind of a secular notion of Western civilization being a direct result of it's the Semitic world. It's not. It never was. Now, this say that all your Christians are all wrong? No, no, of course not at all. That's a different thing altogether. To me, Christianity is almost like a spiritual thing all by itself. It's okay. It has origins in those worlds, but it's ultimately was created by the Catholic Church. Well, changed by the Roman Empire. We'll put it that way. So, in that sense, there is an element of that in Western civilization, but it was also destroyed it as well, because that was how the Levantine infection got into the West through the Emperor Constantine, and the Edict of Milan. Maybe the Cathars were right, and and that the Jesus was actually brought down to earth to destroy the Jehovah, and maybe that's why the Catholic Church exterminated them. They saw the truth there. Maybe Jesus Christ was trying to heal the Levantine. I know he probably didn't. Well, maybe he did exist, but we know those stories are highly embellished and all this stuff. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, apart from circumcision and religious wars that the Judeo-Christian so-called civilization has produced. Everything else, from the classical pagan world to the Enlightenment and the Renaissance in between, were completely and totally a Western and Eastern European trajectory, okay, which this so-called Judeo-Christian thing stole from us, co-opted, I should say, a better word. People who see themselves as patriots in European civilization, the writing is on the wall now, to use one of your terms. The line is in the sand. Are you more geared towards protecting the Levantines' Trojan horse of Judeo-Christian society, and increasingly this Islamo thing that's coming along? Or are you prepared to say the foundations of Western society are 100% pagan, and the modern world, the modern Western society, was 100% deist from the Enlightenment, neither of which are Judeo-Christian? Next time you walk past a public building and look at it from the 1700s or early 1800s, and you see that that's built in a Roman or Greco-classical design, you remind yourself that those buildings have no origin in the so-called Holy Land. Shona Sowen, Sanguine Gnosis, and have a beautiful weekend, everybody.